We saw how beastliness was a suitable symbol for these four temporary worldly kingdoms that come to an end because King Nebuchadnezzar, as the prototype example, was an Adam like figure who degenerated into literally becoming a beast and living as a beast. And as the saying goes, if it acts like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Well, if it acts like a beast and listens and follows the leadership of a beast and listens to the advice of a beast over God, then it's a beast. And so these four kingdoms are beastly in the line of Nebuchadnezzar falling from man, the Adam-like figure that was meant to rule over the beasts, instead becoming a beast. Okay, very similarly with this image. This image or statue is also an Adam-like entity. The main giveaway for that is the word for image, tselem, is the same word as in Genesis 1, when God made man in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Image in Genesis 1, same as the word image here. And of course, the image is in the form of a man. It has a head, chest, and arms, middle and thighs, legs, and feet. This is an image in the form of a man, just like Adam was an image in the form of a man. But how does it fall short? Well, I think there's a couple clues when we read what ends up destroying this image is that it's a stone cut out by no human hand. Now, why did the text need to tell us that? It could have said that a stone came and struck the image, and we wouldn't have said, well, was that stone cut out by human hands or no? It wouldn't have crossed our mind to ask. It wouldn't have crossed my mind to ask that question. Why does the text go out of its way to say the stone was cut out by no human hand? And there may be an implicit contrast there between this image really sounds like something that some man put together. He got the ingredients, the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, the clay, and put it together. This is the construction of human hands. I think when we look at chapter 3 in a moment here, we'll see further support for that when Nebuchadnezzar built his own literal image and statue for worship. In contrast to the original image in the form of a man was created by God, and when God created man in his image, he breathed into him the breath of life. And so there may be a contrast down here where the wind blows away the pieces that the stone not made by human hands crushes into pieces. And so this the wind, or the word for spirit there, like the spirit who is hovering over the surface of the waters from the beginning of creation, and closely associated with, not the same word, but closely associated with the breath of life. This image of a man does not have the nefesh chaya. It's not a living being because it doesn't have the breath of life. And when the spirit, it's devoid of the spirit of God. And so when the wind of the spirit blows, it just blows this thing away. Where I'm going with this, and I'll show you a bit more substantiation in a moment, is it's an unspeakable privilege to be a human being. To be a human being is to be made in the image of God and to be given authority to have dominion, to be a king on the earth and rule over the creation, which those two things probably mean the same thing, by the way. When you follow the Genesis text, there's probably a parallelism thing. What it means to be in the image of God is to be sub-kings, vice-regents, like he is the great king, and we're the miniature kings underneath the king of the universe, as long as we remember that he gives the kingdom to those whom he wishes. It's an incredible privilege, and like they say, with privilege comes responsibility. So it's an amazing privilege to be made a little lower than the angels, to be made rulers of the of the earth. But that's also being in such an exalted position is also dangerous. And so we see mankind, with the help of the serpent, getting it into their idea that, if we only had this one power that God has, we could be gods ourselves. We could do this thing. You say it's the same thing at Babel, and mankind working corporately together, kind of like in this image. This image has 4 different kingdoms, 4 different parts. That's like, mankind working corporately together, like they did at Adam at Babel. And God Himself said, "Man, if they're doing this with one language and working together, nothing can stop them. They're capable of anything, because God invested humanity with His own image, the ability to grow and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and become more and more manifest the attributes of God more and more without limit, growing ever more towards infinity without ever reaching it, but ever growing more, manifesting more and more of the godliness that was injected into our nature by being in His image. Babylon, just corporate humanity, just being corporate Adam, Adam, the father of a nation of human beings, and when we come together, we're just a corporate Adam. This is a great privilege, but a great danger when we start to think like the Babylonians. Well, maybe we believe in God. Maybe God put us here. But even if we believe in God, we've got these great resources at our disposal. Man, look at what we are. We're kings. We have this incredible, powerful image built into us. We can tap into that and write the script for ourselves. It's like an analogy is, say that God is a carpenter, or maybe you want to say God is a potter. That's a more explicit biblical, though I guess you could say God being a carpenter is also biblical. But God is a carpenter, a builder, a potter, and He's making something in His workshop, in His studio. God makes, this is how, at least as fallen man, as we think of it, God is in working in His workshop. He makes the world, He builds creation, He puts us on there, and fallen human beings think, instead of just being God's the pot, where you're the pot that speaks back to the potter, instead of just being something that God made, if I could jump out of this world and just get into God's workshop, in other words, if I could get a hold of the tools that God has at His disposal, and I'd jump out of this world and go into God's workshop, I could make and run universes on my own. I could do a better job of this than God. All I need is to get the tools that God has at His disposal, and I can be a God myself, which really is the gospel of the Mormon Church, Latter-day Saints. That's literally what they teach, is that you can become a God, basically get all the tools that God has, and go off to your own planet with your own spirit wife, and start the process of making your own universes, populating your own planet, and doing the same thing. It's appealing. It deeply appeals to the fallen human nature, that if only I could have if only I could get into God's workshop and have access to His tools, I could run the universe as a God myself. Well, one place that we see this is in the very next. This is just ridiculous. Daniel 2 and 3 together. It's ridiculous, the folly of humanity. So the king has this dream. Daniel interprets it for him. Daniel says, "You, O king, are the head of gold, but there's these 4 parts to this image. It's going to be broken. The kingdoms are temporary. There's going to be a kingdom that lasts forever." And the king shows some, he falls on his face and pays homage to God. You might think that the king is getting the picture. Well, maybe he's partially getting the picture, but it hasn't really taken it to heart, because in the very next, oh, this is just so crazy. In the very next chapter, what we read, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth was 6 cubits. He set it up for the people to worship it. It seems, what's Nebuchadnezzar thinking here? Well, it seems he's thinking, um, okay, so I got this prophecy that this image of 4 parts with gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay is going to be broken to pieces and blown away in the wind. Hey, I've got an idea. I'm gonna tweak the script. I'm gonna edit the script. I'm gonna make an image. I'm the head of gold in that last story. Well, I'm just gonna make the whole image of gold. The whole kingdom is. I'm just the only thing here. And then look, I'm flipping the script. That dream that I had can't come to fruition here, because that one had 4 different parts with 4 different materials. I'm just going to make an image of pure gold. Maybe that'll work. That is classic, foolish, sinful human thinking. Is that it's not that God's ways are ultimate. Yeah, okay, God said this, but what if God said what if God said like this? Okay, God has his way of doing things, but God and me, we're kind of at the same level. We're basically pure. I've got the knowledge of good and evil now. So yeah, God said this, but I'm going to modify the script and go around what God had planned. So Nebuchadnezzar again becomes the prototype, the first of 4 kings who is betraying the image of God, was taking what was invested in humanity being made into the image of God and corrupting that to say, well, I can take these abilities and become a god like myself. He becomes the prototype then for the 4 subsequent kingdoms that are engaged in an exercise of futility, saying, I know this hasn't worked before, but we're going to do it. We're going to do this our own way, and um, and build a kingdom in our own way. And God says, nope. There's a fundamental distinction between you and me. I give kingdoms to whom I will, and your kingdoms are all going to crash and burn and blow away like chaff in the wind.